everyone, and welcome to my presentation tonight, which is a presentation for an assignment about romantic poetry. Basically, it is going to explain about line, stanza, and rhythm. I will also analyzing about a poem that I've chosen, which I'll actually show you later. And so, without further ado, let's go into our first explanation, which is lines. The easiest and the most simplest explanations that I can give you guys is just a group of words that express the writer feelings and intention. Now I can explain this. What we mean by a group of words that it basically is just a bunch of words that the writers might think, oh, this kind of words is kind of like interesting to put together. This kind of words is kind of like jumbled together. Oh, I think that this kind of words feels interesting if I were to create it like this. But basically, it is a bunch of words that is that the writer themselves feel, and they it comes from their own feelings, their own deepest heart feelings, right? And they somehow create it in an aesthetically beautiful way. Like they are able to find beautiful words, and they're able to kind of like curate it into one place and into a line, like a bunch of words into a line. That's what a line is basically. A group of words, a beautiful words into basically called line. Yes. Okay. Now it is the smallest in poetry instrument because it's the most fundamental. And that's why it is important because of a few things. The first one is that, again, as I explained before, it is able to kind of like a giveaway for the writers to express themselves. And the second is that it basically controls the rhythm, the pacing, and also the emphasis of the story or the poem, rather. Sorry. So what I mean by this, by first talk about the controlling rhythm. So line is really important for controlling rhythm because a line itself kind of like houses a bunch of words, which is fine on its own. But if you were to kind of like add different in different lines, different words, different word counts, and all of that stuff, it won't work and it won't create a rhythm, which then results to like not a good aesthetically looking poem. And this is why it is basically controls rhythm because lines basically restricts how much kind of like how much words that you can put in a line, and then it essentially guaranteeing that it's going to rhyme. But this is more that I'm going to explain in my analysis, so I cannot really explain more without actually showing you example. Okay, so moving on to the pacing. What I mean by pacing is that it's just line basically restricts your your speed, or rather your intonation um and your progression in reading the story. Like the writers can artificially, although this is really hard to do, but writers are able to find a way for you, the readers, or rather the researchers, or whoever that is reading the poem, to actually have read them slowly or fast. Usually, if the writer were to write a sad scene, it's going to mean slow pacing because the writers are going to put a lot of details. But if it's something like action, it's like fast something that needs to do that is done really fast, then the writers usually give like a certain words that kind of like emphasize, like one word means a ton of things, use like those kind of big words to create a fast passing poetry. And that is basically what how writers are able to create a passing in their poem. And the last one is emphasis. This is definitely something that is going to really need to be able to explain with analysis, but basically it's just something how the writer can kind of like focus on the line to kind of create like what does this line really means? What does this what how my feelings got this way? It's because the writer emphasized some words that are able to create a meaning that you might not have seen firsthand. And the last functions of lines is going to be being able to deliver the aesthetic and also the meaning of the story or the poem, because line itself basically shows the inside heart, also the intention of the writer. So it basically acts as a medium of how that story, or rather their meaning, going to be transferred, because that is a container. Lines is basically just a container. Okay, moving on to the next thing is stanza. Um, the simplest explanation, again, I'm giving you the simplest explanation, sorry, it's just a group of lines. It's a group of lines that is jumbled into one place, or rather one group. It basically, what it does is just contributes to help the fighting, and also organizing, also shaping the content of the poem. So what we mean by this is that, because it is, let's just say, a stanza is like a house, right? So one house hosts like family of maybe like four or five, and so on and so forth. Basically, this one family will always be related to each other. They always have something that is kind of like they're similar, or rather connected together. And that's what a stanza is. Basically, it creates a container for a group of words that correlates with each other, that is connected, and so on and so forth. But not this is something that is important, is that stanza is also dividing. So basically, if you have two stanzas, like in your poem, it basically creates two families, right? So these two families are going to be different. They have different kind of like way of with different point of story, a different point of meaning, and different kind of point of feelings, that basically creates a progression. And this is what basically dividing is, that stanza creates help dividing two parts of a story of words, like explanations, so that it can progress with the poem, or rather the story. And also, one thing to note is that stanza actually come in many types. For example, one stanza in a poem is, one line in a stanza is called mon. Okay, Okay, and also, one thing to note also is that stanza actually comes in many types, depending on how much lines that is included in that stanza. For example, the first one is like, if you have two lines in a stanza, then it's going to be called a couplet. If you have four lines in a stanza, it's going to be called a quatrain, and so on and so forth. I will not going to explain furthermore, because we have already explained that last week. Okay, now we have finally come to rhyme. So the topic of today's story, even though the other got a bit too much. So what is a rhyme? Rhyme is basically something like uh utilizing kind of like a repeating patterns of similar sounds to be able to create an aesthetically pleasing poem, or rather line or artwork. It basically it functions how like we emphasize words and ideas and line. Although yes, we in the previous one in the lines, the function of lines is kind of like being able to emphasize. Yes, well, also line is able to emphasize it, but rhyme is going to be able to help lines to be able to emphasize something. Because how so? Oh, this I'm going to explain furthermore in the my analysis, but quick explanation is basically it's just it functions like to repeat some words, kind of like in a similar manner, or a similar sound, so that it basically comes to us as an important message, or rather important part of the poem, because that's how human works. Like if they hear something similar in a group, something they'll be able to notice it better, and that's why it acts as an emphasis that works to create a focus on a poem. And so rhyme actually, and also one thing to know is that rhyme comes in different schemes, depending on the stanza actually. So if you were to have one stanza, it could be A, well, it's basically just A. If you have couplet or two stanza, it has AA and AB. That's the rhythm, the rhyme scheme. More explanation if you're confused about what AA and AB means is going to be able to be explained later on in the analysis. So and also the next one is going to be in a quatrain, like something like AABB or ABAB, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of combinations. Basically, it's like ABCD to kind of like point out words of this that ends the same. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, next is going to be rhyme type. Rhyme is not done yet. There's still an explanation that has to be done about rhyme, and that is um perfect rhyme. Sorry, this is a typo. This is perfect rhyme, slanted rhyme, and also internal rhyme. It's a bit of typo. Sorry about that. Basically, what it is kind of like a repeating. In the previous one that I explained, that rhyme is basically a repeating sounds to create an emphasis, right? And this is basically what the rhyme type is going to be. There's perfect rhyme, which are able to create a perfect, or rather a mimic a same sound in their emphasis, something like uh, a hat and also a pat, something like that. It sounds almost the same, and basically it is called a perfect rhyme because it has the same what is it called, the same syllables, and also ends in the same vowels or the same consonants. But there's also other types of groups called slanted rhythm. The explanation is that it sounds similar, but it has different word. What we mean by this is that although it might ends in a different vowels, or it ends in a consonants, but the consonants that ends it is it kind of like ends in the same kind of like same similar sound. The explanation further, or rather the example further, is going to be explained in the analysis. Seems like I'm running out of time because I've been is too much explaining. So, and the third rhyme type is going to be internal rhyme. It's basically a repeating word that is going to create a rhythm. So, if you were to have some kind of word in a stanza, two lines that's going to be repeating the same thing, but overall the same kind of like word can be found. It's going to be called an internal rhythm. Um, there is going to be also example that I show in analysis. So analysis, we're going to explain about To My Excellent Lucasia on Our Friendship by Catherine Phillips. Okay, so for the analysis, I have 4 points that I'll explain about this, the rhyme. Um, or rather the poem itself. I'm going to for analysis that I've concluded in this poem. The first one is that this poem consists of 24 lines and also 6 stanzas, right? So let's see. 4 lines. One, two, three, four. One, two, three, four. That's great. There's 4 lines and basic and 24 lines, sorry, four, and this is by 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then it's going to be 4 times 6 is 24. So yes, it is completed by 24 lines, and there's also 6 stanzas. Yes. Now each stanzas have 4 lines in them, meaning that it's going to be called a quatrain stanza. And that's the second analysis. The third one is that the rhythm type. So the rhythm type of this poem is actually dominated by perfect rhythm. What I mean by dominated is that there is actually other type of rhythm that is available in here. So perfect rhythm is, for example, the first stanza, sorry, the second stanza. So as you can see at the end, it follows the rhyme scheme of ABAB. I have to explain this as well. So it follows the rhyme scheme of ABAB. So what does ABAB means? It's T, B, T, D. A as T, B as D, A as T, and B as D. So that's what called a perfect rhythm. It basically ends in the same way and the same syllable as I can explain. Slap is 1 syllable, believe is 2 syllable, cap is 1 syllable, and deceive is 2 syllables. So it basically acts the same and sounds, and it's kind of like pattern, the same pattern kind of thing. Now, the second rhyme type is actually slanted rhyme. As you can see in the first stanza, there's also one in the last stanza. Basically, this is the example. Time, felicity, crime, and thee. Although the word and the syllable is different, the ending of the word, the vowels, it and the consonants, but the consonants actually create the same sound as how of this vowel, sorry, the E vowel will look like. So As you can see right here, time, felicity. Felicity is going to be the B part, and D is also the part of the B. So time and crime is going to rhyme with each other, and felicity and thee is not exactly rhyming. Sorry, it's not exactly perfect rhyme, but it still rhymes felicity but thee. As you can see, the but thee is actually the same sound and everything. And yes, and basically that's how it basically slanted rhythm in this poem. And lastly, as I was saying before, emphasis about internal rhyme um, explanations. I will give an example. Although this is not actually internal rhyme, this is actually how internal rhyme would look like if it were to be available. So it's something like this: my joy, my life, my rest. If it were to be if it were to be available in different lines, say my joy, my life is this part on the at top right here, my joy, and the first part, and then the second, my life. So something like my joy is all I can think, and the last part, my life is what I want. So something like that is also called internal rhyme because it's repeating word creating a rhythm. So it doesn't necessarily have to end the same way at the end. And yes, I think that's all that I can explain about rhyme and also the analysis of the To My Excellent Lucasia on our friendship by Catherine Phillips. I hope you all learned something new today. Yes, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.